Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Stanisci of NLL Lacrosse Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV Channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on NLL Lacrosse Talk, our co-host Gary Groob and our very special guest, Scout extraordinaire Neil Doddridge, and a former player to boot. How you doing, sir?
Doing well. Thanks very much for having me. And hello from the West Coast, Vancouver.
Absolutely. Vancouver. Let me ask you first and foremost, always, people pick up the game, love the game, and spend a lifetime playing it. How did you start?
Well, I grew up outside Toronto, neighborhood Clarkson Lorne Park. And I had already played, I believe, a season of hockey. And my mom's boss suggested I register for lacrosse. And so I think maybe it was a Tuesday night. I went to soccer. And then Wednesday I went to lacrosse. And let's just say I never went back to soccer. And I began at Clarkson Minor Lacrosse and played all my minor lacrosse there. And I guess that's how it started.
Yeah, I was almost there 30 years. Clarkson's a pretty, and Lorne Park, very sports-centric community.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, it was, a great neighborhood to grow up. Clarkson Arena was maybe 400 yards from my front door. My father was a Mississauga firefighter. He might have brought the truck to the odd game, and he's probably one of the more popular captains with the Mississauga Fire Department, because if he was on that shift, that meant you probably got to leave the hall and do some things outside the fire hall, to say the least.
Yeah, that's good. So first of all, you now I see a jersey in the background. Gary pointed it out. You had a good time playing for the Swarm.
Yeah, it was at the end of my career, the 15th year. Marty O'Neill was hired as the general manager to start the team. At that time, that was owned by the Minnesota Wild. Bob Negley Jr., rest in peace, he's passed on, but he was the owner, and he wanted a lacrosse team. And so I think they bought the expansion team. I think they might have bought the Montreal Express franchise. And then him and I he told me right off the bat, he goes, "You'll be the first guy I sign, and I'm going to need your help." And so, I played there for 1 year, and then I worked for him for 5 years before he left.
Go ahead, Gary.
Well, let's just go a little bit earlier than that. I want to talk about a little bit of junior, because really, when I look at all the awards that you've won, you had record with Man Cups, 7 Man Cups, and you'd won the President's Cup, you'd won the Founders Cup. The only one that was missing in there was the Minto. Never won a Minto Cup. Let's talk about junior a little bit. Okay. Where did you play, and who was part of that program?
So Clarkson being part of Mississauga, the Mississauga Arrowheads, the Mississauga Tomahawks were the teams that, I want to think that the Junior B Arrowheads in the early '80s with the Pascudo brothers, Steve Dodds, McMillans, they all played at Clarkson Arena. As I said, it was pretty close to home. Friday nights were home games. I skate there during the winter. I'd go watch every lacrosse game. I'd watch them in between periods. I wanted to emulate them. Like, I wanted to play junior lacrosse, I guess. And so by the time I got out of midget, they had moved to Burnhamthorpe, a different arena. So it was about a half-hour drive, central Mississauga. And they were quite good. They were a junior B team, and they were, top of the ledger. Players that were there were, John Tavares, Ted Dowling, John Rosa. John was a 68. John Tavares was a 68. I was a 69. Brian Maltby. There was a strong contingent of players at Clarkson Lorne Park that didn't really want to play junior B. But then the year I was going to play my first year junior, they all came. And Bill Sanderson was a big Clarkson guy, and he ran the back door, and we actually went on and won the Founders Cup in '86. That was my first year junior, and yeah, it was just, we played 2 years of junior B, and then all of a sudden they said, we're going to move you up to junior A. So the whole franchise went to junior A.
Right.
And then we we learned what it was like to play junior A real quick. It wasn't like junior B, we'll say. Going into Peterborough.
Baptism by fire, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah. Watching Peterborough, playing against Peterborough, I emulated the way that Peterborough played, won, buried teams, and that's the way I kind of conducted my business through junior.
Mm-hmm. So we get out of junior, and the Mill League just becomes the Mill League, I guess, from Eagle around '91, right? And you get in with Detroit. Now let's talk about the Turbos, and you won the championship that year.
Yeah, I'd actually gone on a hockey scholarship to the States, and I played for 1 year at Oswego State, and then sustained an eye injury, and I came home and played that summer, my last year junior, and I ran into Ted Sawicki. He was their goalie, and he says, "Yeah, we got camp, this pro league runs in the States." I had never heard about it. He goes, "Why don't you come out and try out?" And I said, "All right." So I went and tried out, and I just watched the Gate brothers play for Brooklyn in the Mann Cup. So I kind of figured it out. Like, I watched Scott McMichael play for Brooklyn and saw the damage he was doing. I was like, "Oh, interesting." And I actually got cut. It was like 4 weeks of camp, back and forth to Detroit every weekend. And they cut me. And it was Tom Wright, the late Tom Wright. He played in the old pro league. He was our GM from Sarnia. And Mito Martinello was our head coach from Windsor. And his two sons were on the team, Terry and Ronnie. And they had played NCAA lacrosse. They were a bit older. But he called and said, this is back when they called and said, "Oh, yeah, we cut you." And so I said straight up, I said, "Could I ask why?" And he goes, "We don't think you're tough enough." And I said, "Well, I fought your tough guy in Sarnia, Andy Allen." And he goes, "Oh, you were the guy that wore the half visor?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, okay. You're the guy wearing a half visor playing junior hockey, junior lacrosse." He goes, "Come back next week." And it's funny how it goes full circle. That weekend I went, Blaine Harrison tore his ACL. I didn't know what an ACL was. And he's getting into the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame in a couple of weeks out here in New West. I haven't seen him since, but he got injured, and then I was put on the roster, and I played every game. And I honestly I was young. I guess I was fast, and they told me I didn't really need to score, just keep an eye on Paul and Gary. So Paul and Gary were like, "Take as many penalties as you want, because we seem to do better when we're shorthanded." I said, "Oh, okay." So that's how that started. My first year, and we ended up winning. We did quite well. We're up the Paul and Gary Gate. No one had figured out how to cover them yet, and they are who they are, right?
Right.
And they've been lifelong friends since. They're the reason I'm out here. They're the reason I moved out west. Is Paul? Actually, Paul, he asked what I was doing for the summer. I said, "I'm not sure." He goes, "Why don't you go play with my buddies from Victoria?" He goes, "I won't be there this summer, but eventually I'll come out." And I said, "All right." So I came out for the summer of '91, and then eventually moved out here in '97, and then we won Mann Cups together in '97 and '99 in Victoria. So that's why I live out west.
Oh, wow. No, we had Darius Kilgore on the show, and he talked about the Mill League, and he's talking about basically it's the wild, wild west. And it's true, because something that would be a change of possession in the Mill League would probably be a 5-game suspension in today's NLL. I have a great collection because Bill Fox had given me his collection of VHS tapes and DVDs, and so I have quite a few of the old games, which is pretty cool. But to watch those and try and put it against today's game, I really don't think there's much comparison. What do you think?
Well, it was pretty rough, to say the least. If you went in for a loose ball and you got hammered from behind, it was just a possession. It wasn't a penalty. So the stuff starting to come out online. I played in Detroit, and then I went to Boston, but I was involved in a brawl in Buffalo. I was playing with Boston. You're allowed 3 imports, the 3 Canadians. And so myself, Marty O'Neill, and we had one other Canadian. Maybe we only had two. We ended the Bandits' 24-game win streak in the All Dodd, and Marty always seemed to have a bit of a run-in with Tavares. You know, if it was here or there, and the thing is, I'm friends with both of them. Like, and John's like very good friend, and they always used to just go at each other. And this brawl in '96, no, this was like 93, I guess. The brawl started at the end of the game. The referees ran off the field, and ESPN cameras ran on the field. So and this brawl lasted for like 20 minutes, and no suspensions. Just, all right, turn the lights off when you leave, kind of thing. And but ESPN too was a title sponsor there, and they had some pretty cool camera angles. They bring a camera in from the corner, like the Zamboni entrance, that would actually come down onto the field and stuff. They were ahead of their time, to say the least. And game of the week, and we played in the old Boston Garden when I played in Boston my first year, and then the second year we moved to the Fleet Center, now the TD Garden. But we played in the big rinks, and we were getting good crowds. The Garden, we were getting like 12, 13,000, and of course the odd was always sold out. And
Spectrum also, you get 16, 17,000 there.
That's the loudest arena I've ever played in front of, is the odd.
And also with the old arenas, the fans were right on top of you guys, and you had the low glass. So yeah, there was a lot of back and forth with fans. I remember catching a number of games at the Odd and a number of games at the Spectrum, and I loved it, man. I loved it because the interactions were crazy.
First, like honestly, I'll tell you, one of the first games we played was a matinee game in Philly when I played for Detroit, and I was, we had the purple spandex on. We were, our jerseys were pretty purple, and I got a penalty at early in the halfway through the first quarter. So I go into the penalty box. And I'm 20 years old, and this place is 16,000. It's packed, and it's a matinee game. All of a sudden, there's this guy like right in my ear, and I'm like, what is going on here? And I take my helmet off, and then I turn around. The glass is like this high behind the penalty box, and I turn around, and it's Chopper. He's got his face painted like in the wings, and he's like Doddridge, yelling at me, and I'm like I couldn't understand. Like I didn't realize how close he was, and then I'm like, oh, that's the old arenas, right? And like even the glass behind the benches in Philly were like they were yelling at our coach to sit down, like he was standing on the bench, like yelling at him, and yeah, it was just it was a zoo, and we were good. Dallas Alec was the goalie for Philly. It was a tight game. I think we won like 14-12, but it was always a battle going into Philadelphia, no matter what team you were playing for. And the Philly fans were awesome. Never had a chance to play there, but bucket list in the next life, we'll say.
For sure.
Chopper was a busy guy.
Well, Chopper was a guest on here too, and so we got into some of the stuff, and a couple of games he actually got thrown out of, which is weird because Jay is just a mild-mannered guy. Put the face paint on, and all of a sudden, whoop. Yeah.
Well, I met him in the bar after, and he bought me a beer. He's like, "Are you Doddridge?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Great game." I'm just like, "What are we doing?" Like, and yeah, it was favorite road rink. Obviously, going into Philadelphia was always a war. They knew the game, and it was always great to play in there because it was always a good game.
And they love physical play.
Oh. Yeah, you miss a guy, you hit the glass, you end up in the second row because the glass just like gave way. So you never get hurt. Like you miss a guy, and then even Buffalo was even better. It was really loose, the glass, so no injuries in that arena.
Also had the loudest horn, if I remember right. The Memorial Odd, that horn just it would wake the dead.
Yeah, it's the best horn in sports, I think. I heard it like even I was talking to. Well, I mean, obviously, yeah, it is. Every time I hear it, it brings back great memories because for good reason. Yeah, it's one of my favorites. Yeah.
So
wasn't that part of the greatness of the games back then? Because it seemed like people were more free to do stuff. It wasn't as pristine and as I don't know. I want to say politically correct, but I don't really mean that. But anyway, people nowadays have to be
Prim and
controlled.
proper, I think you're looking for, Frank.
Yeah, back then it was not a free for all, but everybody had a chance. Like you said, you're wondering having a beer with a guy who just raked you over the coals verbally, then buys you a beer. It's a different kind of time, a different kind of world.
Yeah, there was no video evidence of a lot of it, so it was really enjoyable. Like the interaction between the players and the fans in the early '90s, late '80s, and a lot of sports. There was no barrier, right? Like I mean, you love to play the game, but like as a Canadian, and they're flying you in. Remember my first year, if you flew through Pittsburgh, you got a free flight. I was like, well, let's go through Pittsburgh, like every time. Yeah. So at the end of the year, I had like 6 free flights on US Air. And so we're going to spring break in Daytona, it's not costing you anything. My travel partner was Peter Park. I don't know if you name from the league, 6'7", Dolph Lundgren. He's going to vet school at University of Guelph. I'd pick him up on the way to Detroit off the side of the highway. Stop at Taco Bell in London and just make our way. And, we're road warriors for the weekend until if we were staying at the Joe Louis, we played at the old Joe Louis Arena. That had a pretty good horn as well. Mm-hmm. And, those are like, I talked to, I still am in contact with a lot of the guys I played with. I was fortunate enough that I played on a lot of U.S. teams. So I have a lot of U.S. friends, like U.S. athletes that I played, like Brian Reitz in Maryland, Kip Falks, Maryland guy, Under Armour guy. Mm-hmm. And with social media now, you talk to them anytime, right? So it's, I mean, I went down to the women's Final Four in May, and I stayed with Brian Reitz and his family, watching the women's Final Four, which is unbelievable. Like the fact that lacrosse has come that far with the women's game as well.
Yeah, it's taken huge strides, and I think the lacrosse sixes are going to push it right over the barrier, and with the right TV things going on, and Michelle Boyer at the helm, I think we're in really good shape for the women's game to really take off, and World Lacrosse is going to see to it. I'm pretty sure.
Awesome, that's great. Yeah, grow the game, right? That's what we're all about.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we finally have the right people in the right places doing the right things. And, because we've been notorious for having it and coming so close and then going 12 steps back and then redoing it and coming close and going back. It looks like we're finally having the right people doing the right things and getting over that hump now. So, and it's, in the PLL, it's in the NLL, it's with the women's game, the lacrosse sixes to get into the Olympics in 2028. And that looks like it's moving forward too. So that'll be a huge coup if we can, have that come through. So everything seems to be falling into place now. So, but one of the things that I always like is in order to grow forward, you got to know where you've been. So that's why I love having you guys on the show, and you guys paved the way with everything and all the growing pains and all the other stories, because anybody can read the stats. It's the stories that once you guys are eventually gone, the stories go with you. So if we can get those out there, at least those are legacies also now.
Mm. Yeah, no, I hear you. I was fortunate enough to play with during the '90s. I would say, like, everybody says their era was top shelf. The '90s were, I just turned 20 in 1990. So, and then I was in the pro league at 20, and the Gates had just graduated Syracuse. Tavares just finished 4 years of university football at Laurier. And now it was a full-time thing. You're playing summer and winter. And, the Darius Kilgores, the Richie Kilgores, all the kids from Boston were loading up with the Boston team, all the UMass guys, all the top US players were playing in Baltimore and New York. And it really kind of culminated in '98 at the World Championship Field Championships at Hopkins, with all the best Canadian players having been doing it for 8 years, summer, winter, playing against the US. And that, like, I didn't make that team. I got cut, and I guess it was better when I was 32, but I got cut from that '98 team, and I played for Scotland. My mom's from Stirling, Scotland, so I was fortunate enough to wear a kilt for 2 weeks. But that game, I remember at halftime, it was like 10-1 for the US, and I'm in my kilt and I'm just like, well, this isn't the way it was supposed to go. And then that second half was probably the best lacrosse I've ever seen in my life. And what they did is I don't know if people realize this, Canada kept the same guys on the field. The face-off guy was Rod Tapp. He'd win the draw. You know, one guy would come off the bench. That was the only switch they'd make. They kept the same long poles. They kept the same wings, and they kept the same 9. And that's why they came back. And it was epic. You know, I ended up losing in overtime, but it was probably the best game I've ever seen.
Right. Now I want to talk a little bit about the summer stuff because we touched upon you won the Mann Cup with Victoria in '97 and '99, but you have a streak that's I believe it's still a record. You won 6 Mann Cups in a row, 2 with Brampton, a couple with the Six Nations, 3 of them, and then 1 with Victoria. That's a damn good streak.
Yeah, it was, very, very fortunate. My first year senior, I was in Victoria, came out on Paul Gates' recommendation, and then came back. And actually our second year in Detroit, Buffalo, that was the first year of the Buffalo Bandits. And so Tavares and I had played junior together, and he came out and played for the Burrards. So kind of followed him. I went to Victoria, he went to Burrards. We still kept in touch. And then, where are you going to go? Everybody's like, where are you going to go for the summer? And they're like, oh, Brampton's loading up. I said, well, I could go to Brampton. It's 20 minutes from the house. And so then I got a call, and our 92 team, Jimmy Veltman, John Veltman, we were loaded. Mikey Meridian, we had 2 Meridians. We had Billy Gary in net. We had Tavares, we had Troy Cordley. One guy that's, kind of under the shadow, Troy was at that age was probably one of the best players, top 5 in that era. He was, and then he got injured late 90s. But we were loaded in that Brampton team. But the thing is, we had top players, but we were 8 or 9 deep with tough guys like Brian Shanahan, Brian Bates. We were just, if you wanted to play anyway, we could do it. Because we knew we had to go on the road to play our Mann Cups, and the Western teams seemed to want to rough it up. And we took that year. We beat New West at home. There might be video on it. The floor was sweating, so they had to put all this cornmeal on it or whatever, rosin. Right. And so at the end of the game, it was Hoosiers. Troy Cordley scored the overtime winner, and it was the floor was covered in this white rosin. And they came up with these chicken feeders in between the periods to put all the stuff all over the Brampton Memorial floor. It was from Hoosiers. And Troy scored in double overtime, I think. Randy Jones coughed the ball up the middle. Came in, I think Tavares shot. Tavares picked it off, shot. Troy got the rebound, scored the winner. And as Troy said, he goes, I had never won anything in my life. He goes, first time I always came second. And we're going down Brampton on a flat deck, with the Mann Cup, and no one was even out, but we didn't care. And that was our parade at 2 a.m. on a flat deck. That's and most of the guys probably don't remember that, but I've never been a big drinker, but I remember all of it. And then we went on a roll. 93, we came out, played in Coquitlam, lost the first game, tried to brawl them at the end of the second period. None of them would fight. They had one guy, Bob Rose's brother, Sean Rose. He fought everybody, and then we won that. And then there was an article in the Toronto Star saying Brampton was going to hire a head coach and GM, and we're like, "What are you talking about?" So I guess there was kind of a power struggle. Our GM released everybody, right? And so we all went to Six Nations. So that's how that happened. So we all went to Six Nations. I was actually traded there through Fergus. And then we had everybody: Randy Mearns, Steve Fennell, Kilgore's. We had the younger Kilgore now. Travis came up, and then we went on a road. We had won 2 Mann Cups, so it was the same kind of core. Brian Shanahan as well, and there were some tough series there. 95, we went into West, and I think we had 4 brawls in 6 games. We won in 6 in New West. And that's the toughest series. There's video of that. They're the toughest series I've ever been a part of in anything hockey or lacrosse. And but that's the way it was played, right? Most of the backdoor guys use wood sticks. Fighting was,
the norm.
Part of it. It was part of it.
Yeah.
And we always said, you win the battles, you win the war. So if you win your battles on your shift, or you take it like you're getting the better of the player that you're covering, then you'll end up winning the series. So that's kind of the mantra we took. That 95 series, we actually got Marty O'Neill. He's a Western guy, and him and Tavares have been going at it for years. And they knew that I knew Marty quite well because I lived with him in Victoria.
Right.
So they said, "Do you think Marty would come play for the Chiefs?" I said, "Yeah, I think he would. Let's call him." And he didn't hesitate. I think he packed his car that night and drove cross country.
That's great.
And he is honestly the reason we won the 95 Man Cup. He won all 4 games he played, and we won 4 games to 2. So yeah. And then Victoria was a treat. My girlfriend and I got transferred out with work in '97. The end of '96 series, in the handshake line with, I don't know, people have probably seen the video. It's a good one on YouTube. 1996 Man Cup, 60 miles from Six Nation Chiefs in the dressing room.
Yep.
So that series there, we won 4 straight. I had a solid series. I think I had 5 goals in the first game on Marty, and let him know after every goal. And then there's video evidence on that. He 2-handed me like he was trying to hit a T-ball, and things got rough. We won the series 4 straight in the handshake line. I knew I was moving out west, so I introduced myself to the head coach, Nermal Dillon, Hall of Famer. And I said to Nermal, I said, I'm moving out west to Vancouver. I'd really like to play for you if possible. And he said, yeah, give us a call when you come out. And so I went back to Buffalo with the Bandits for the next year. And then as soon as the season was done, I moved out to Vancouver, to Gastown, with my longtime girlfriend. And that's how I came out west. 97, still here, love it. Son goes to West Van High. It's been a great ride, to say the least.
For sure. And you continued your touring of all the cities in the NLL, because you made it through was it Syracuse, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Washington, Calgary, and then finally Minnesota before you became a scout. I want to talk about Calgary for a second there, because you won a championship with them. That's the same year you also won with Ladner, Senior B, I guess it was, with the President's Cup, right?
I didn't actually. I did. That was a blip.
Well, Calgary when you were in the lineup, anyways. I know.
Yeah,
you only had a couple of games with them on that.
Yeah, they. Yeah, it was. I had a bit of an incident in Calgary, and like playing, nothing like off the floor like a few of the other fellows, but yeah, I didn't actually at the trade deadline. They released me, and I think right around the deadline we were maybe 4-4, and so I'm a team guy, to say the least, and I think maybe Chris Hall was the head coach, but Brad Bannister was calling the shots. He was the owner, and he was there's a Cowboy involved, it's Brad Bannister, and anything that guy touches turns to gold. And Brad made a decision that he wanted Matt Green. And Matt Green, I think, had been released earlier, and so Matt Green came on the roster, and they told me on the Friday they were going to re-sign me on the Monday. So I was loyal to Tracy and Caleb, and a lot of the Victoria guys were there. So I said, okay, I won't sign anywhere else. I'll come back. I'll sign back on Monday. Well, on Monday they maybe won on Saturday. They changed their tune. Well, I couldn't go. Like, I was done. Like, yeah. All of a sudden I was released for the rest of the year. I couldn't. Yeah, I told like 3 teams, no, because I don't think Calgary wanted me to play for another team. Like, that wouldn't be a good situation for me playing against Tracy or Caleb in a playoff game or anything. Like, yeah, that's not a recipe for fun. And so they kind of sandbagged me, and then it was too late. But that's fine. It's the first time it had ever happened to me. It was a learning process. Chris Hall explained it to me, and I took it like a man, and it is what it is. And then right away, Marty knew he was getting the job, so he said, "We'll end it on the right note. You'll come to Minnesota, and then you'll play, and then call it a career." I said, but that's what friends are for, right? So they pick you up. They pick you up when you're down.
Well, in 121 games, you had 94 goals, 93 assists, 362 penalty minutes, 500 loose balls. I say that's a pretty good career.
Oh, a lot of fun, especially, yeah, like coming out of junior, like we didn't even hear of a pro league, and like all these kids now, you know, they're all our buddies' sons who are coming through the NCAA now. Like all they want to do is play the NLL, and that's great. I mean, that's the end goal, right? Like for a lot of them, and you know, they want to, you know, have a chance to win a Minnow Cup. You know, you don't really talk about Man Cups, but they want to, you know, they want to be a pro player. They want to play in the NLL. So that's awesome. And a lot of these kids are all getting Division I scholarships, and they can thank the pioneers like Paul and Gary Gate, right? And those are the ones that kind of open the doors for all the Canadians. So anytime you're a player or a kid and you see Paul and Gary Gate, say thanks, because they're the ones that have driven the salaries up, made it possible for these kids to go down on scholarships to the States. And you know, Tommy Marichuk too, he was probably one of the top players as well. A lot of them came out of Victoria. Del Halliday, Chris Pratt, they were probably the first 5 that left and went to the States. There's a late John Crowther. He was probably actually Paul and Gary Gate speak of him. The Victoria guy, he passed away. He went to Rutgers, and he passed away. There's a John Crowther memorial game. He passed away in the mid 80s, I think, while he was home for one of the summers. And he might even have been an MVP, a Mike Kelly Award winner. You might have to look that up. But John Crowther, he was the first, I think he might have been the first Victoria player to leave the island and go on scholarship. And then the Gates followed them.
Lacrosse also is an international game. You've had some connection with Switzerland. Tell us about that experience. You know, lacrosse is played in a lot of places. What's it like in Switzerland? We've had calls from Europe of coaches there, and it sounds interesting. What was that experience for you?
Well, Switzerland's been great. Been with them since before COVID. The previous 5 years before that, I coached the Finnish national team with Tracy Kolaski and Devin Ray. The first goal was the Syracuse World Indoors, and you know, we top 10, but we had a young group, and so then we brought Finland to where they were in Langley, right, top 6. We did the field lacrosse as well, so we got to experience Netanya, Israel. And the thing that was great about it is the field guys bought into the box, and the box bought into the field. So there was a lot of the same 25, 30 players going back and forth. And I really think that was the reason that Finland did a steep climb there within like 5-7 years, because I think that was only really introduced in 2012 to them, and that's when they hosted it in Turku. But after Langley, John Tavares and I were actually going to do the Switzerland thing together, and it was a go, and then he got the head job with Buffalo. So then he was kind of he watched a lot of the Langley games, and he's like, geez, like we can grow this around the world, you know. And you know, his wife Katrina, I think, might have a bit of the travel bug as well. So she was like, hey, like Neil's going over to Finland and Iceland and Prague. Let's try and do that too. So John kind of had to step back just because he didn't know how much time the full-time job would take with the Bandits, and it's probably good that he did step back. But then Brian Reese came on for a couple of the camps over in Switzerland. Most beautiful country I've been to. Train systems, unbelievable, beautiful. The athletes, dedicated, educated, passionate, positive, really want the sport to do well. Like, I mean, they have a really strong elite hockey system in Switzerland. There's a lot of things to do in Switzerland besides lacrosse, and the group that they have seems to be, I haven't met the field guys yet, but our box guys have done quite well, and we finished 6th in European Championships this past summer in Germany. And I think it was the highest placing that Switzerland. We had a chance for fifth. It would have been the highest if we would have finished fifth. I think sixth was a tie with the field, but great to see the game grow in these countries. And the Swiss are on the move, we'll say.
Do they still stop at red lights and turn off the engine?
Well, you know what? They've got most of their they're ahead of the curve, right, with their automobiles. So most of their Mercedes, Audis, they shut themselves off at the light now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. That was a big thing. Back in '87, I went there on my honeymoon, and that kind of freaked me out, sitting in a friend's car, and all of a sudden he'd turn off the engine. What are you doing?
save gas. Yeah,
Yeah.
Saving the earth. Yeah,
That's funny.
Great country. Train system's unbelievable.
I want to talk about scouting now. You finished a career, and we talked briefly that you went scouting. What were you looking for as a scout? Because you spent 6 years with Minnesota, then you jumped over to Calgary and was a scout with them also. And what was the MO that you would be looking for in a player?
Well, you don't want to tell me secrets here.
Well, keep it big then.
Yeah. Well, okay. I got a real quick eye for if a guy can play in the league, like if he's athletic enough, strong enough, if he's aware enough. But one thing that I picked up on in Minnesota is because we had a lot of them were ACL injuries, and so
Right.
I don't know if I was talking to you like off camera regarding this, Gary, but I found that running style has a lot to do with if athletes themselves run into complications with injuries down the road. I always found that players that run on their toes compared to running on their heels, like a heel toe runner, like we all see, like a lot of players, their running styles.
Mm-hmm.
I found that the players that run on their toes usually only injure their ankles, and unless it's a contact injury, like if a guy gets hit in the knees and has, the players that we found were, I call them heel locks. So they would eventually they'd land, like they'd either run flat-footed or they'd land with their heel down first. If you look at running styles, and eventually, not due to contact injuries, I found that they were blowing their ACLs eventually. Could be at the end of a shift, non-contact, tiredness at the end of a shift, but it would happen eventually. We had one player from the island, and as soon as I saw him, I just said, this is I didn't draft him. He was actually, I played with him the first year. I wasn't on to that yet, but I was seeing it, all the players that were coming up with these injuries. I was like, oh, they're all run the same way. And so that's part of the thing. And so like ACL injuries are $50,000. They cost the team $50,000. So if you're saving the team money by playing the game the right way,
Mm-hmm.
Drafting players that are athletic and you don't think will, unless it's a contact injury, you're saving the team money. So we kind of, like Marty, I always suggested to Marty, watch this player, watch that player, running style, this and that. And then I'm a big proponent of playing on your proper side. So if you're a lefty, cover righty, so you don't get your feet all mixed up, right? So you're taking away top side and you're going stick on stick and you're playing the proper side. And then when you're running down the floor, like we've always been taught, your stick's in the middle, right? So, and I honestly, I don't know if it's knock on wood, but the teams that I've coached, we've never really ran into injuries. I remember another rule was like, don't bring the ball to the bench on changes, because that's where we are. Like if you take it away always to the penalty box side, maybe you get pressured by one guy. But if you bring it near the bench, that's where all the piranhas are, right? Like they're coming, like. And I remember I was coaching at Coquitlam, and we had a great kid, Robin Lowenberger, like rugby guy, and team rule was don't bring the ball to the bench. And so we're playing in Poco, small rink. He starts running towards the bench with the ball, And I'm like, no, like, and he blows his ACL. Like he just, because all of a sudden he's got guys coming from every angle and all, and he went down, and it was just like you wanted to cry because he had already done it previously, and you're just like, you didn't have to put yourself in that situation. And so, yeah, just, I love watching the game. And so I would much rather watch and pick up stuff like how players play, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, identify players that, are on the wrong side. I think that's an understated point. Like players like a Steve Priolo could probably play on both sides of the floor. But there's certain players that if they're on the wrong side of the floor, isolate them, take them to the net because he won't be able to turn. And, a couple come to mind, won't call them out, but
sure.
That would be it. But there's reasons I'm not coaching the NLL, and I prefer European travel than going through North American airports, because doing that for 20 years is overrated, to say the least. And I'd much rather fly to Europe.
Can I add something to that ACL thing, just so people understand the point you were trying to make about being on your heel or on your toes? You were looking for guys with a spring in their step. In other words, when they get hit, their feet are like a spring, as opposed to on their heel, where you end up with that. It accelerates the damage because your heels are locked on the turf or the concrete, whatever surface you're playing on.
Well, some guys run on their toes, like they're always up, right? You look at NFL football players, like the balls of their feet, the only thing that touch touch.
Right.
But then if you get full, there are some players. There's one in Vancouver, I know he's flat-footed, so eventually he's going to blow his knee. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
He runs like this.
It's a jarring motion. The spring that your toes affords you is like a shock absorber. Yeah. That's the point I was trying to make. So, that kind of running provides a natural shock absorber, where with a heel, there is no absorption. It's just thud, thud, thud.
But what happens when the ACL tears? It's when the heel gets locked. When the heel locked into the turf and then you turn, that's when your knee blows. So if your heels never touch the floor, like,
it won't lock
all game. Yeah, there's no chance of it. You'll just roll your ankles, right? And
well, those ACL injuries are notorious for being called injury minus contact.
Yeah, exactly.
Non-contact injuries.
Non-contact injuries. That's why I always ask. Yeah, I've got a buddy's son played football at UBC, and so I asked him. He's tore his ACL 3 times, and there's a chance this individual might play in NLL. I'll tell you off camera who he is. But he's an all-Canadian slot back, played at UBC, won a Vanier Cup. His dad was a player for the Shamrocks. Well, I'll give it out. Alton Davis was the father. He's got 2 sons that have retired from the CFL, Terrell and Marcus Davis, and unbelievable athletes. Marcus has done his ACL twice. I said, I watched you run. Like, what was the deal? He goes, the shoes. He thought the shoes grabbed. And then I kept that. I've asked around, like, even to schools, like, not even knowing like who they're sponsored by. And it's Adidas. It's these Adidas turf. And they all say the same. They don't know. They're not talking to each other. They keep telling me, it's these Adidas. Yeah. And so Marcus told me that. And so I was kind of onto that as well. That wouldn't affect the NLL, but you worry about, you worry about field lacrosse as well. Yeah. So it's it's a different dynamic. I don't know. Like, there's so many things to think about with the game. It's such a great game. But if you can take away injuries, then they get to play, right? They're playing the proper way. The game has obviously changed since the 90s. There hardly any fights. Play honest defense. Don't take penalties. Play your proper side. Cross check. Don't slash. Slashing is an easy way to a penalty box, even though I was probably the biggest slasher ever to play. That was the best play, best way to intimidate a guy. But it's not the game today. So if you play your proper side, be athletic, take top side, cross check, two hands. No one likes to get cross checked, and that's illegal. One of the most legal parts of the game, which is great. Mm-hmm. And you'll see more and more teams doing it. Finishing your check, putting the guy on his back, finish your check. Not a lot of guys finish your check now. They got like the Man Cup was a no-hitter, like your body position, take away top side, but no one want to take penalties because both power plays were lethal between Peterborough and Langley this year. So that's why it was honestly, it's probably why it was a no-hitter, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. We only have a couple of minutes left, and when I was doing a little bit of research, I came across on your Facebook page a childhood friend of yours by the name of Jeff Avery, and you played with him when you were growing up, and you played in Lauren Park and Mimico. And talk a little bit about him. He's having a tough time, and he needs major surgery. So, just if you want to put it a little bit more in the forefront.
Yeah, Jeff. I grew up with him. He was a '69 birth. He lived right down by the lake in Clarkson, Meadowood Road, and there was two boxes that we'd practice at. It was either Meadowood or Clarkson. And it was Jeff Avery, his name is. He was the Steve Nash before we knew who Steve Nash was. Like, he was the point guard of the basketball team, good lacrosse player, bit undersized, but so was Steve Nash, as we thought, right? His Jack Beyonda was at his house like every week, this is who his dad was best friends with Jack Beyonda. So his father, Hal Ping Avery, was best friends with Jack Beyonda. So by the time I got to junior, or I did some charity games, I'd known Jack Beyonda he's like, "Hey Neil, how you doing? Geez, you're getting big," for years. And so Jeff, that's how I grew up with Jeff. We played junior together, lost the Founders Cup in '87 in Kitchener with Tavares was on our team, Dowlings, Roses, and he kind of he was a film guy, he was a creative guy. So film took him to BCIT in Vancouver, and then all of a sudden he's living in New Zealand, and still did lacrosse with New Zealand. Ran into him 2002 World Championships. We're playing for Team Canada. John and I, we would play junior together. Hey, it's Jeff Avery. Anyways, long story short, Jeff's come down. He needs a heart transplant. He was coached the local semi-pro hockey team in New Zealand. Ran into a couple heart attacks here a couple weeks ago, and now he's on a transplant list. He's in Auckland Hospital. Been aerobaced from where he lives into Auckland. He's been on the donor list. Long story short, it's got a page on my Facebook. If you find the time, friend of many, great guy, lacrosse guy first, hockey, basketball guy, film guy, and he's 52 years old though. Needing a heart transplant, that's an eye opener there, to say the least. But I appreciate you bringing his name up. Yeah, good friend. Yeah. Praying for him.
It's not unusual. Lacrosse people hang out together and live for each other. That's something that we've learned with a lot of the interviews that we've done.
That's I appreciate that. Yeah, brothers of war, right? What a game.
And at peace.
Oh yeah.
Right after the game, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was probably a better post game player.
There you go. A team player when it comes to post game.
Yeah.
One final thought for anybody who's up and coming. What kind of advice would you give them, just as we only have about a minute left?
I would say play as many sports as you can. If you're a hockey player and you're playing lacrosse in the summer, don't give it up. Great examples, John Tavares, the hockey player. Brendan Shanahan. I remember Brendan was at our junior lacrosse practice, and his agent was the one that pulled him off. Said, "No, you're 18, you can't play lacrosse anymore. Play as many sports as you can, as long as you can, until someone makes you make a decision, because these people will be friends for life. These relationships are what you'll have when you're 50 as well. But especially with social media, but play as many as you can. If you're a lacrosse player, stick in your hand every day, especially when it's warm out. Wall ball. That's all I say.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time with us. That was amazing.
Thanks very much for having me. Yeah, it was a nice way to spend the hour.
Neil, it was a real pleasure getting to meet you, and I'm glad I never ran into you on the floor.
I want to introduce myself.
Yeah, I'm sure. Neil, it was a real pleasure. Gary, thanks for putting this together.
My pleasure as always, Frank.
And Neil, a pleasure to meet you, and thanks for sharing all these great stories and these opinions on the game of lacrosse.
Awesome. Great show. Thanks, sir.
You're welcome. Okay, for Neil Doddridge and Gary Groob, I'm Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching NLL Lacrosse Talk, seen live Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, normally special time today. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For lacrosse talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody.